All right then, faithfuls. Now we're joined by our guest for this week, Connor Rogers of Bleacher Report and Stick to Football fame. Connor, how's it going, man?
Good, guys. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. It's an honor for us to have you, and I'm sure you're familiar with my other Nothing But Bananas colleague here, Eric Crocker.
That's right.
Done a little bit of time with the New York Jets. Just out of interest, awkward question to kick things off. What did you think of Croc when he was a Jet?
You're putting me on the spot like that, huh?
Definitely.
I was a bottom of the barrel guy, so there's not much to there
That's
wasn't
all
much
right.
to like about
Listen,
me.
much more further than my athletic skills ever took me. So who the hell am I to judge that right now,
Yeah.
right?
So basically, I think what we'll start things off with, Connor, you're a Jets man. And kind
Right.
of the talk of the town at the moment, New York Jets, they just traded up, went from 6 to 3. Why are they going there? Is Saquon Barkley a smokescreen? Best running back in the draft. People are saying it's for Saquon. They're going for Saquon. Is that a smokescreen? Are they going quarterback, or do you legit think that they are going Saquon Barkley with that pick?
Nah, man. If you give up that many picks when you're the New York Jets that clearly have needed a quarterback for way too long or stability at the quarterback position, it's simply for a quarterback. And if you make that move like the Jets, you have to be comfortable with at least three of the guys in this class. I mean, I think a lot of us feel that Sam Darnold's going number one overall to the Browns. So it means that the Jets have some kind of level of comfort with one of or two of Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, and Josh Allen. And, the Jets made this move because for a lot of different reasons. One, they have ties to the Colts front office. Rex Hogan was their director of college scouting, and now he's on to Indianapolis as a co-VP. So the direct phone line was there to get the deal done now in March rather than wait till draft week. And then, listen, the Giants were never going to do business with the Jets, so that was kind of out of the question. And the Browns, they don't have any interest in selling that number one pick because they're a team that, just like the Jets, that needs their quarterback. So, listen, Saquon's a great player. I think he's a top two player in this class. But when it comes down to it, the Jets aren't in any kind of position to, use a premium pick and the rest of their second round picks on a running back.
So what kind of ramifications do you think that has for the 49ers? Does that mean we're looking at QB 1, 2, 3 with the Giants, or could the Giants go
Oh,
elsewhere?
yeah, this is something we talked about on Stick to Football today. Me and Matt Miller were saying that this is great for the Niners, for the Raiders, even for the Bears. This pushes all the blue chip players down the board. When it comes down to it, when you look at this draft, you could sit there and say four quarterbacks are probably going top five when you look at how this board breaks. And do they deserve to go top five? The quarterback position, this happens all the time. The value is too high. The demand is too high. These guys go way higher every year, and talented players get pushed down the board. So when you're looking at the Niners, it depends what they truly do want. They spent a decent amount of money in free agency. They've been super active on the market, which is great for them, finding the right fits for what Kyle Shanahan needs. But somebody's going to fall down that board. And for a while, I felt like we were automatically plugging Roquan Smith there. But now you're talking about a situation where can a Quentin Nelson kind of fall? I don't think a Barkley falls there. Will Denzel Ward fall there and he's too good to pass up is a question that they could face. So this is all great news for the teams like the 49ers.
So Denzel Ward, we wanted to talk about cornerbacks with you today, Connor, and you've mentioned kind of the consensus top guy, and you say he's too good to pass up. Do you think it's a good scheme fit for the 49ers? I mean, he weighed in, he measured in a little bit taller than people were thinking. So that means, do you think he could go in this kind of press cover three scheme the 49ers like to run?
I do. And that's just because it speaks to his talent. He's a scheme versatile kind of guy. Is he your classic longer corner that you might want? No, he's not that kind of guy. He's a guy that's, a 5'11". Really, if you talk to people that have been around him or have been around training him, he's a guy that's probably going to play at 186, right? I mean, he's going to play at a lighter frame, but you can't just look at his size and say that's who he is because he's physical, he's feisty, he's an incredible athlete. You can really ask him to do anything. He has that kind of man coverage skills. He could be fine playing in his zone. He could play off coverage because, like I said, he's just an incredible athlete. But I've seen him in person. I saw him when Ohio State came to Rutgers this year down on the field. The guy has tremendously great length, and that makes a difference at the cornerback position. I mean, like Eric can tell you, we get so caught up in height and we get caught up in weight and we get caught up in, athleticism, but that length at corner makes the difference. And I think he's a guy that passes the threshold And when you look at the film, there's most of the time it's nearly flawless at every phase of the game, not just man coverage ability, not just the ball skills, but coming downhill and playing the run, coming downhill and tackling, doing all the right things. That's who Denzel Ward is. And I like players like Josh Jackson, Isaiah Oliver, and Mike Hughes, but you can pick out different warts in their games where Denzel Ward, it just checks every single box. And that's what's so impressive when you look at him as a pure corner.
You're nodding away there, Croc. You're a big Denzel Ward fan as well, I hear?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to tell people, man, like me, when I think of cornerback position or any position at that, there's always the exception. And people can have an idea of what they like, whether, I probably want my receivers 6'3", 215, run 4.4, and be able to do all this, that, and the other. But if there's a receiver like, that's 5'11", 195 pounds, and he's just better, he runs great routes, he has great hands, he's explosive, all that, I don't care how tall he is. I'm going to take that guy because he's the better football player. And I think that's the same thing with Ward, where, 5'11", 185 or whatever, but he's just good. To me, when you talk about all around, I like other guys too. I like other cornerbacks, but when you all around, and I did the little write-up and I showed different things that he does well. It doesn't matter what coverage you run. It doesn't matter if it's press man, off man, cover 3, cover 2. He's very instinctive. He's very physical for his size, and he's just, he's fluid. He's talented. So to me, if you were to draft him and you miss, it's because of maybe he just didn't put in the work after, he signed a contract. It's not going to be because of any limitations that he's shown on film right now, because I've seen him do it all. I've seen him guard 6'4" receivers, go up high point and knock the ball away, or 6'6" tight ends, knock the ball out of their hands or pick it off on some of those guys. So Denzel Ward, man, I'm extremely high on him.
Is he the Odell Beckham of corners, from what you guys have been saying? Regardless of size. Is he the Odell Beckham
something like that, where, Odell, it doesn't matter. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. He's jumping over people. He's running great routes. He's explosive. He's getting in and out of breaks quick. He has, he has those big old hands. It's something like that where or even Antonio Brown, where, he's smaller than everybody, but you saw how he did AJ Bouye in the conference championship game or semifinals, whatever it was, when the Steelers played the Jaguars. Some guys, it just doesn't matter. They're great football players, and they're better than the person across from them. And I feel like Denzel Ward has that type of talent, and he's shown that type of ability on film.
And I know we're pretty protective of Keller Witherspoon here. So say he was healthy, and say Richard Sherman was back and ready for week 1. Could Denzel Ward play the slot? Could he line up and play nickel?
Yeah. I mean, he even showed that on film. He showed that on film guarding smaller guys, taller guys. It literally did not matter where you play him. He looked to play everything, at least man. I don't know, if you put him in the slot and he's playing zone, like, it's kind of like, a lot of what the 49ers do. I don't know if he'll get lost in zones from the slot, but as far as man in the slot, he's fine.
How much of the slot have you seen play Connor in college, or is this going to be kind of just banking on the physical abilities, his mental abilities, that he can play there in the NFL, or does he do it in college as well?
No, I think he's been moved all over. And I think when you look at him, he's taken matchups on really, like Eric said, at all different levels. When you look at him against Simi Cobbs has like 5 inches and maybe 30 pounds on him in that game this year. And he comes back and keeps fighting against him. So he's a guy that plays to his matchups. He's a guy that if he's playing the bigger receiver, he's going to know to get his head around, and he has to play the ball because he's going to lose at the catch point if he doesn't. And then he's a guy that can play in the slot because he's shifty enough. He has just great athleticism to really – he's pure when he backpedals. He's pure into his backpedal. He's a guy that can get his hands on you at the line if you ask him to do that. So I think he's a matchup guy. And when you say that about a defensive back, it's probably one of the bigger compliments, because it's so hard to perfect your craft all over at defensive back because there's so many different jobs from the defensive back. So I think that's really what separates Ward in this corner class, is the clear-cut kind of number one guy.
So if the 49ers are not lucky enough to see Denzel Ward sitting there when they're picking. Are there any other quarterbacks for you, Connor, that are first round material for the 49ers based on what we have, what our current needs are, and who's likely to be on the board kind of when we're picking 9, ignoring any kind of trade back possibilities at this point?
Yeah, I mean, 9's a little rich, but I think there was a time period there where we were talking about Josh Jackson trying to find his way into that conversation. I think 9 for me is a little rich. I think he's a guy that does struggle with the back pedal. He's a guy that, he was playing receiver in spring of 2015. So there's been the back and forth. There's been, not the same kind of necessarily game experience that a guy like Ward has. But when you look at Jackson, 8 interceptions, the ball skills are there. He's a guy that can jump in. Don't be fooled by, the 4 or 5'4" kind of 40 because he's a longer guy. It's different for these taller guys. But when it comes down to it, I think at 9 for the Niners, if Ward's not there, it would be a surprise to me if they took a corner because after the Richard Sherman signing, I don't think they're necessarily a corner desperate team. Now, the game changer is how do they view Minkah Fitzpatrick? And I think that's the burning question around the NFL right now is how does every team view Minkah Fitzpatrick? In my eyes, he's a guy that's a chess piece, right? And you guys have seen this a little bit with Jimmy Ward where he's been asked to do so many different things. And I think when you look at Minkah, ideally, would you love to see him play downhill? Would you love to see him play as a strong safety down in the box and do a lot of different things? Nick Saban loved to send him on the blitz, something he was very good at. He can really excel covering out of the slot. And in this league, matching up against tight ends is one of the more valuable skill sets that, a safety can bring to the game. So I like Minkah as not just a pure safety, but I do like him best there. And I wouldn't rule him out at 9 because he can do so many different things. And I think at the end of the day, he'd be a valuable piece for the Niners defense.
Whilst we're talking about Minkah then, should we talk about Derwin James a little? Another kind of possible guy that in that DB conversation. I think he's very similar to Jaquiski Tartt. I think we've got that kind of player, Derwin James. I don't know, Connor, what do you think? Derwin James and obviously Croc, feel free to chime in on this one as well.
I mean, when you look at Derwin, to me, he's a guy that's kind of similar to the mold of like the Jamal Adams of this class. Now, I think he's a little bit of a better athlete, but he doesn't have the same instincts that Jamal had coming out. And some of that can be attributed to a guy that missed most of his sophomore season. It takes a while to get back. And when you look at the Derwin James tale this year, you watch the first couple games and you go, okay, he's not the star we were hoping for just yet. You watch the second half of the season and the superstar traits are there. And this is a player that me and Miller have talked to on the podcast. He's going to be the alpha of the locker room. And that matters. And he was that guy at Florida State from the day he walked in as a freshman. So Derwin James is going to be the highest player on the board for a lot of teams that are picking in the 8th to 16th range. And we'll see how far he slides. Now, like you said, for the Niners, it would surprise me a little bit because they do have Tartt there, and I think they just have, some other pressing needs that they'd probably feel a little more comfortable addressing. But this is a young regime. They have so much time in their contracts where they can take the best player available approach, keep stacking talent, and worry about the needs down the line.
Yeah, we saw that with Solly Thomas, I suppose, last year. A lot of fans were pretty upset.
Doubt. Same approach.
They went and got Solly T. Maybe offered a slightly different kind of run-stopping skill set to who they had, but as a kind of a interior defensive lineman type guy, it ruffled some feathers for sure. Now, moving through the draft now. So we're out of round 1. We're moving into rounds kind of 2, 3, 4. How early do you think the 49ers consider corner and which guys are kind of in that discussion in maybe in those rounds, kind of maybe 2, 3, 4 guys that you really like, Connor, who are kind of in that cover 3 press cover mold?
Yeah, it's interesting with the Niners because they're sitting at 59, right? So, and this is something we talked about a little bit before we started recording that Eric was saying, listen, I love Isaiah Oliver, right? So you're looking there and you got 59, 70, and 74. How much do you like the player? Can the Niners maybe package some of these picks and climb a little higher back into, say, Isaiah Oliver's sitting there at the top of day 2 when round 2 starts? That's a guy that might be worth for their scheme going and back and getting. So do the Niners like a guy like that? Do they see him as a fit where it's worth going to get him? I think Jair Alexander is a super talented player, another smaller corner, but a guy that he struggled to stay healthy this year. But when you go back and watch the 2016 tape, another guy that can play off, another guy that's physical coming downhill, and a guy that really has great instincts in the red zone. So Jair Alexander's a guy we're wondering how far is he going to slide. This is a loaded corner class. You have guys like MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis are very similar players where they thrive as press corners. Now, will the Niners see them fitting in that cover 3 with a single high safety, guys that can really beat you up at the line of scrimmage? Can they open their hips, turn, run down the field, and really execute in a press bail? That's what I'm wondering to see from Carlton Davis. I've seen MJ Stewart in person. I think he's getting more flexible. I think he's getting faster. I think he was never asked to do that at UNC, which is a really tough transition. So when you look at the day 2 names that the Niners can look at, those are kind of the 4 guys you would assume you highlight that they might see as scheme fits.
Okay. What about day 3? There's the LSU guy, Tolliver. I know that's one of Croc's boys.
Yeah, he was. Tolliver was interesting because Tolliver coming into LSU, 5-star recruit. Really expectations were as high as you could expect. Now that LSU defense is just NFL talent across the board, where he's almost flown under the radar somehow, which is interesting. He's had his struggles at times at LSU, but definitely a guy that's probably sitting in the 4th to 5th round range. Now, when you're looking at another corner with length, another guy that, LSU always seems to have these man cover corners that can beat you up at the line of scrimmage, all the way going back to really Mo Claiborne, who's now a big piece for the Jets, a guy that was drafted in the 1st round by Dallas. So Tolliver is a guy that he's going to go day 3 because he never fully put it together on tape at LSU, and a guy that, might be more of an average athlete, but somebody that if a coach thinks they could fit him into their scheme and get the most out of him because he's still so young, then those are the guys that you do use your day 3 picks on as gambles to develop down the stretch.
Do you worry about his arm length? It's like 30-inch arms for a 6'3",
which is so bizarre, right? Because I didn't even really notice it on tape, or never really notice it. You have to question if it's a problem. How does a guy play the catch point, and is the arm length a problem? And how does he use his hands at the line of scrimmage? So right now, it's not a big concern for me, but in terms of NFL evaluators, they do look at those things because, once again, this is a developmental guy. He's not in the conversation as, we're talking about with Ward, Jackson, those guys that are top 20 locks, essentially, or even the top 50 guys like Oliver and Carlton Davis, because he's a little more raw. So that might hurt him, but for me, it doesn't really drop him that much.
How about you, Croc? Still high on Kevin?
Yeah. Tolliver, man. I mean, when I watch the film and I think about, me playing cornerback and some of the things that, he knows some of the Jets guys, we had Tim McDonald, who's the DB coach, and he's like, hey, you got to stay square, you got to leverage step. And, they asked me to do different things. And then, I watch film and I see, because obviously, I was a bigger cornerback, 6'1", 200 pounds. So when I watch some of the guys, I know what's difficult for a guy that's 6'1", 200 pounds. And then I watch Tolliver and I see him do some of the things effortlessly. Then I know that he can play in the scheme. It's going to be about consistency with him. So sometimes he would do it and it was beautiful. And it's like, man, he stayed square at the line. He leveraged step. He was able to play catch technique, which to me is tough, especially when you're a bigger corner. But then there's sometimes where it's like, okay, I see, he lacked it there. And then at LSU, it's kind of hard because you can't really slip up because they have so many guys waiting. They had the guy, Greedy Williams, waiting right there. Another big-time cornerback that he was only like a freshman. And then they had Jackson, number 1, who they used him a lot in the slot or safety. Then eventually he played more just cornerback. So and then we saw him, run well at the combine and things like that. So they had so much talent where it's hard to kind of be a guy that kind of messes up, or and Tolliver, I kind of would know more than me. I'm not like an insider or anything, but it seems like he has some off the field things. Tolliver,
I think work ethic.
He has some injuries.
I think work ethic is a question with him. I don't know if it's fair to say a big question, but I think it's a matter of, like you said, like he's a guy you see and you're like, okay, if I've seen him do it once, I feel like I can get him to do it consistently because the talent's there. Is he going to work at the next level to be that? Because when you're a 5-star and you're still a little raw coming out, it makes you wonder, okay, can we get him there? And I think that's what teams want to know right now.
If I'm the 49ers, the only thing that may be encouraging with that part of it is having a guy like Richard Sherman, where maybe now, Richard Sherman might not be what he was, athletically, but his mind is still there and his work ethic is still there. So if he can get a guy like Tolliver under his wing and say, okay, look, You're a 4th-round draft pick, but the talent is there. The technique is there. It's just inconsistent. This is what we're going to do. And he spends time with them. I just heard him on the press conference today talking about spending extra time with the guys after practice, working on technique, watching film, things like that. If you can get a guy like Tolliver, and I think that's a perfect situation for a guy like Tolliver to go into that type of situation, whereas maybe like, last year where the 49ers don't really have that veteran guy that's played at a high level. I mean, Eric Reed hit and miss, but I think the situation that Tolliver will go in with the 49ers this year where he's not expected to be the guy, but he can learn from a veteran, I think that would be an ideal situation for him. So that's why I like Tolliver a lot for the 49ers. He might not make as much sense, other teams would, maybe a younger secondary.
Speaking of ideal situations, what was everyone's thoughts on Siran Neal? Kind of a potential matchup, could play safety corner, kind of a la Jimmy Ward. He was a bigger guy with that press cover potential, stood out at the Senior Bowl. How do you think he's a possibility for the 49ers, and where do you think he's kind of getting drafted after a questionable performance in the Combine?
I see him in the 5th or 6th round. I think he had his highs and lows during Senior Bowl week. I think he's a guy, when you see him step on the field and physically, it's like, okay, this guy is different than everyone else. But the question is, once again, his back pedal, getting his head to the ball, the little things like that, you can tell there was struggles there. And I think, how far away is he? These guys are, I don't want to say lesser knowns, but more under the radar for a reason. And he struggled against the bigger competition. So, and like you said, the Combine probably didn't do him any favors. So I think with Neal, this is another guy that's really, I would say, back end of day 3 developmental guy. But once again, when you're talking about getting the guy into a cover 3 and how does he fit, and does he make sense for the back end of our depth chart or roster to take a flyer on, and can he play special teams, which is something I think he can do to stick around while you're developing him. I think that's where a guy like that has a chance.
I guess if you're a 49er fan, those guys sound quite good with with Adrian Colbert. Similar kind of potential transition from safety to corner style guy who's been a bit of a stud. Where do you think ultimately he ends up in the pros?
Siran Neal?
Yeah, Siran Neal.
I think it's a matter of, what scheme do you want him to come into? Because if you want him in a cover 3, I think he's got really the desirable length, and I think he's a guy where you can probably give him the help that he's needed. Now, if he has to keep things in front of him, maybe you do like him at safety. So once again, it's probably a versatile piece. It's kind of interesting to see these guys move around. It was another guy at the Senior Bowl with the same experience as Neal, with Cameron Kelly from San Diego State. Is another long corner that the NFL wants to see reps at safety, because how does he see everything in front of him? These guys have the length really to give help coverage. They have the length to make things happen when the ball is in front of them. So the question is, how, can they play coverage up at the line of scrimmage to really turn around? And how do they do with things when the ball's in the air? Really, when they fall behind the play, do they have the speed? So if they don't have the speed, you have to wonder, they become very scheme specific at the cornerback position, whereas that's why they get the reps as really 3rd or 4th safeties that stick on special teams.
I've got you. Correct. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like Neal. When I look at the 49ers scheme, I know we call it cover 3, but a lot of it it's like a zone with man principles. A lot of times, you don't really have a lot of help. You're kind of on an island, so they press bail. I'm familiar with it because we did a lot of it when I was with the Jets, Rex Ryan's scheme. And even then, they would just roll the coverage to the other side and just kind of leave Revis on an island. But with guys like Neal, it's how's your press technique? And from what I saw at the Senior Bowl, I thought it was well. I thought he did well. I saw him get hit with a double move a little bit, so I said, okay, he's a little heavy-footed, but for the most part, we saw, Richard Sherman, he's kind of like the blueprint for this defense. And coming out of college, he wasn't the most athletic. He didn't have the fastest 40 time. He was a converted receiver as well. But, can we just get this guy to understand mentally what we want him to do? He's long, he's athletic, he can play at the line of scrimmage, and can you play man coverage? And once he put all that together with his mind, that's when it all worked for him. So, a guy like Neal, who didn't run the fastest 40 time, he ran 4.56 or 4.58, or it was something around those lines. We've seen somebody play at an extremely high level in this scheme that wasn't the most athletic. So that might be encouraging for someone like Neil, or for somebody like John Lynch to take a guy like Neil.
Okay, we're just going to finish on this. Before I hand the floor over to Croc to do some catch up with Connor about some of his mates and teammates who are still with the Jets. But are there any sleepers that we haven't discussed that 49ers fans should be looking out for? Day 3 time, guys that you think, Connor, that the 49ers might go and get?
I think the wild card would be Holton Hill from Texas. I mean, he's someone that unfortunately struggled to stay on the field. But when you talk about a guy that can be a top 3 pure press corner out of this draft from talent, this was the guy. I mean, back in, I would say, late September, this is a guy that was showing up at the end of the first round in mock drafts. So the talent was there, and he does have really good film. The question is, and I think it's drug test related, is this a guy committed to football? I think that's what people want to know. And I think he unfortunately had to declare early from Texas, because I don't know if he would have gotten back in the good graces under Herman in that program to get back on the field. But you're talking about a player with upside as a very, very good number 2 corner that could probably fall to the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, because depending how bad teams see the off field. So Holton Hill would be my guy, because I think he checks the boxes for the Niners and for a lot of teams, to be honest with you. But the question is, once again, is he a guy that's ready to commit, and a guy that's, truly ready for the life of the NFL?
Yeah, I was doing a little mock draft, and I took Holton Hill in like the 5th round, was it?
Yeah, that's right where he's slotted.
Yeah, so yeah, I did a little fan speak mock draft, and I took him. He's a big body, he's athletic.
Yep.
So 5th round, it's kind of like Rashard Robinson. 49ers took a flyer on him, where okay, he has question marks, but 5th round pick. 49ers traded away a 4th round pick for Kabri Bibbs last year, So 5th round, you could do worse with it. So Holton Hill, definitely I could see them taking a flyer on a guy like him. But there was a couple corners. I know you guys were at the Senior Bowl. Isaac Yeadham, Yeadham, is that his name?
Yep.
That's another guy that fits the mold. And then the guy Campbell from Penn State. I like a little bit of what I've seen from him on film. So the kind of lesser known guys are not really super out there, not really talked about, but those are guys that I feel kind of fit the mold of what the 49ers are trying to do on defense.
Yeah, I can just remember it. I think it's Yeadham snap that was on NFL Network. It was like a press sort of deep route. And just the speed that he showed on just that one rep was kind of astonishing. The way he kind of bumped and run, and then just completely cut the guy off, forced him to the sideline. What do you think of him, Connor? Do you think he's a good player? What do you think?
Ike Yeadham?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's starting to rise when you talk to more and more people, because you like the physicality, right? And you like the build. So if you want someone that, can really fit into that press bail kind of technique, he's the guy that really you'd want to do it, because he's almost built like a safety when you see him. And he has the physicality at the line of scrimmage. And I think he will beat you up at the line of scrimmage and frustrate you. Coming out of that Boston College defense, which we've seen a good amount of pros, considering the program, come out of, I think he's someone that, the name is going under the radar, and all said and done, the back end of the 3rd round, early 4th round, I would not be surprised to hear his name called.
Wow, that's early. I would not have expected that.
Yeah.
Talking to sort of reading stuff, reading NFL Network, reading various thoughts. It's like a 5th, 6th round guy. Early back end of 3rd, early 4th, perhaps a sweet spot where the 49ers don't have themselves having a pick, but we will see. Anyway, Crocker, I know has some questions for you.
Oh yeah, well, I just have one question, man. My guy Rontez Miles. So we came in together. We were both undrafted. I was coming from the Arena League. He came from Division II school, California, PA.
That's right.
And he's still hanging around. I just saw they put a little tender on him and everything, man. So I just want to know, from your perspective, how's he doing?
He's been everything they could have asked for and more. I mean, he's essentially their special teams captain, it feels like, and he's been the rock on coverage units, and he gets burned as a 3rd safety, because he's been. Now they got Terrence Brooks in now, and Terrence Brooks is as good a 3rd safety in the league that you can find behind Jamal Adams and Marcus May. Bowles likes the interchangeable 3 safety looks at times, but Rontez is someone who impressively has stuck around between 2 different coaching staffs, between the Rex Ryan era, where he carved himself out as Rex used to like that third safety to be a guy that can blitz and really be the leader of special teams. And for a while, it was Jamesy Hedebo, who actually just retired from the NFL this week. And then Rontes came in and took that job. So, and Rontes has transitioned very nicely under the Bulls defense where, yeah, he's probably the fourth safety instead of the third safety, a guy that thrives in the box, as physical from a defensive back as you will ever see.
Yeah.
But, I mean, talk about carving out your role on special teams. He's been excellent on kickoff coverage. I would argue probably one of the more harder working guys because he's had to fight to a different level to stick around through different regimes. And he's just been – I mean, he's exceeded expectations by a mile for an undrafted free agent.
And he's one of the few guys that I can think of off the top of my head that is still there. That's still there. Another guy was Brian Winters. I believe he's still there, right?
Yep. So, Winters got a big extension last year, yeah.
Okay, I know he was a mid-round draft pick. So, it's just good to see some of the guys that, I was there with still doing well. Rontes, I was really around him. I was really around guys like, Geno Smith and those guys. But, yeah, man, it's good. It's good to see someone, is still hanging around through the different regimes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then, I guess that's that. Connor Rogers, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad. Well, we'd love to have you back. And maybe until then, good luck with everything. And we'll all be looking out for you. And Niners fans, go check out Connor. Stick to football, him and Matt Miller. Obviously, Matt a big 49ers fan, so there's plenty of 49ers content on there you guys are going to want to listen to. Thanks very much, man.
No doubt, guys. Have a good one.
All right,
All right, later, guys.